I'm Mark Sponsler, and welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast, the week starting Sunday, November 14th. Stormsurf, waves, weather, buoys, altimetry, snow, temperatures, El Nino, weather analysis, real data for outdoor people, all the time, no hype. The immediate outlook is not particularly encouraging, but looking long-term, things are looking much better. Let's get to work. Looking at significant wave heights in the North Pacific Ocean, we don't see a whole lot going on, as we alluded to earlier. Little areas seas, maybe, 13 feet off the Oregon coast. Another little area of disturbed weather producing, again, like 14-foot seas approaching the dateline, but nothing worthy of generating any swell of interest. But, again, as we get into the future, things are going to look much better. As usual, we'll start looking at jet stream level winds. These winds up about 30,000 feet help support the formation of gales, and when they form, help direct their track. We're looking for a trough, a dip in the jet to the south, sort of like here. And what that helps to do is create a counterclockwise flow aloft and down at the ocean's surface. That's the hallmark of low pressure. And low pressure, if it's strong enough, generates wind. Wind, if it's strong enough, generates seas. Seas, as they radiate away from the fetch area, eventually turn into swell. And swell, when it hits your beach, turns into surf. We have a trough here, but it's really pinched off. There's not a lot of wind flowing into it. It's just not doing a whole lot to help generate a gale of interest. Yeah, we have a little patch of winds here. What are they? About 170 knots pushing off Japan, but they immediately die just off the coast there. And other than that, you see the opposite of trough, a ridge building over California. That is the sign of high pressure, and high pressure, certainly in winter months, does nothing to generate swell that is of any interest to us, but it does sort of keep the skies clear, makes for a nice day, but really, as we're approaching winter, we want to see inclement weather, rain, snow in the mountains, all that good kind of stuff, but we don't see it at the moment. All right, let's put this into motion. So we get into Monday. Sort of the same thing happens. The jet actually splits, with part of it pushing over the northern Gulf, part of it pushing over Hawaii. And typically when you get this split pattern, all you do is get high pressure in between. That does nothing for generating swell. So really, nothing on Monday, more of the same on Tuesday. Wednesday, even less energy into the jet, just sort of this homogeneous, generic kind of flow. The jet is generally south, like at 35 north. But just no energy in it whatsoever. Then as we get into Thursday, a little bit of a pocket of energy, something right in the area that you start looking at, starts developing 140 knot winds off Japan, pushing towards the dateline, building a new trough starts digging out on Friday. And then you get, still it's a pinch trough as we get into early Saturday, but trying a little bit, not much. And then as we get into Sunday, moving into the northwestern Gulf, a little bit better tight picture there, and then more energy building as we get a week out. Again, we never believe a model a week out, but at this point we'll take anything, because right now all there really is wind swell and this background southern hemiswell. At least that's making for something rideable at some locations. So next we take a look down at the ocean surface. This is surface level pressure, surface level winds. You see a pretty calm pattern. The blues, or this sort of greenish color, that's 20 knot winds. There's some 30 knot winds, but really nothing even at gale status, 35 or greater, and certainly not storm status. It need to be 50 knot winds. So just a very calm pattern. 1024 millibar high off California, 1028 millibar high north of Hawaii, and just really nothing going on. We attribute this to the inactive phase of the MJO being in control. We'll get more into that in just a minute. That tends to steal energy from the jet stream. So it's not a complete surprise that we're in this kind of just really nothing kind of pattern at the moment. As we get into Tuesday now, little gale forecast developing here over the dateline. Very little, 35 knot winds. Another one here off the California coast. 35 knot winds continue as we get into Wednesday. 30 knot winds off here. So maybe something that's capable. 30 knot winds aimed at Hawaii, that could generate some wind swell. Same for California from the system off the coast there. So we get into Thursday, the gale now relocated off of Oregon, starts building with 35 to 40 knot winds. And something tries to get organized over the dateline, 30 knot winds there. Even as we get into Thursday night, 45 knot winds aimed at North California. So some hope there. And then this broad kind of gale thing tries to get organized on Friday. Doesn't quite make it. Let's see what happens as we get into Saturday. All of a sudden, instantly, as we get into Saturday night, it almost looks like winter is supposed to rematerialize. A broad gale in the Gulf with patches of 30 and 35 knot winds. Another broad gale developing with 30 and 35 knot winds west of the dateline. All sort of trying to congeal somewhat, trying to generate something. And as you get into Sunday night, a legitimate certified gale of decent size. I mean, you need more than just a little patch of winds. You need a broad area of winds. And here we go, 30 to 35 knot winds aimed at Hawaii, potentially the U.S. West Coast. Still a week out, still a long ways away from either Hawaii or California, but at least a smidgen of hope on the models. So then we go to the wave models. Right now, in the past couple of days, there's been no significant gale activity. So there's really no swell in the water other than wind swell. You can go look at the quick cast and sort of see what's going on in terms of wind swell potential for wherever you are, Hawaii or California, but not a whole lot expected, just rideable kind of surf at minimum, right? You know, not real surf, just fun, go out, have a good time kind of surf. So we get into Monday, no real change. Tuesday into Wednesday, a little gale again tries to organize on the dateline. We're looking for at least 20-foot seas. We're not seeing it. We're into Wednesday night, and then finally, things wake up a little bit off of California. 20-foot seas show up over a small area, and they start building as we get into Thursday, and then 29.2-foot seas. This is the highest seas over this whole domain in the picture. These are the max winds, 46.4 knots right in this area. So potential for surf for North and Central California, maybe something wrapping into exposed breaks of Southern California. Hawaii, we're still waiting. Yes, this little fetch here generating, we'll say wind swell for north-facing shores of the Hawaiian Islands is possible. And then we get into Saturday, and really it's not till Sunday till things start getting a little more interesting. A little gale up in the northern Gulf, but a broader area of 28 to 30-foot seas set up off the Kuril Islands, aimed pretty well at Hawaii and the U.S. West Coast. And actually, it kind of looks like a normal late fall pattern as we get a week out into Monday. So, something to look forward to if you believe the models. Making a quick look here at just local winds, mainly at California, but also at Hawaii. Normally in the summer we're looking for wind swell. Now that's the exact opposite of what we're looking for. We're just hoping that it doesn't turn into a blown out mess. As we get into Monday, a light northwest wind pattern along the California coast. Pretty nice. Same thing relative to Hawaii. High pressure, 1028 millibars lurking here. A little bit of low pressure off the Pacific Northwest, but nothing too impressive at all. Little low, cutoff low, spins up north of Hawaii on Tuesday. Quickly lifting north, you see high pressure ridging into the Pacific Northwest, starting to generate 30-knot north winds off of Cape Mendocino. That's probably good for wind swell down into California. And then the new low starts taking shape, winding up Wednesday, Thursday. And there you go, into Thursday midday, 45-knot winds aimed well at the coast. Trades for Hawaii, not too strong, 15 knots, same sort of deal as has been the case. And then high pressure tries to take over Friday night and does successfully relative to California. So a bit of northwest winds there. Trades also blowing pretty good into the Hawaiian Islands as we get into Saturday. More of the same on Sunday. Now the question is, how long will the high linger and how much local winds will there be in wind swell? Too early to know, but sort of suspect it looks like it's already fading out. Trades continue into Hawaiian Islands. And again, much energy theoretically starting to develop over the western Pacific. Precipitation potential. We're looking at California here. We talked about the ridge, the jet stream. This is actually precipitation here, but you notice the precip follows the jet stream. And sort of keep your eye here on the Pacific Northwest, because where the jet stream is pushing it into the coast, an atmospheric river they call it, that's where all the precip is. And we'll blow through this real quick, because relative to California, well, maybe a little bit of rain on Monday night for Cape Mendocino, and then that all fades out. Next low starts winding up off the coast. It pushes some moisture into California on Thursday night, and down, little snow maybe for Tahoe, down into the Sierra into Friday morning, and then that quickly fades out. And then as we get into Saturday, high pressure takes over, and really nothing for California. Now, focus your eyes right here. We're just going to blast through this whole thing here and just see continuous, almost non-stop precipitation into British Columbia for the whole run of the model for the most part. So if you were going to go skiing, or if you want to know where the snow is and all the precip is, that's where it is right now. We'll be generous and say from Washington northward, but California, for the most part, high and dry. Snow forecast dashboard snowfall amounts expected for Olympic Valley. 10 inches, something like that. That's not too bad if you believe it. And pretty much the same for the Tahoe Basin down into Mammoth. We're not going to show it, but it was like an inch or two. Most of it confined to the northern Sierra. Snow levels here, you can see pretty high right now, 12,500 feet. That's actually the freeze line, dipping down occasionally. Here's where our precip's going to be right here. And theoretically, snow to the bottom of the mountain, but then rebuilding back up pretty high, back to 12,500 feet, then falling again as we get into the Thanksgiving time frame. Still really early in the season, so this is not unexpected. You'd expect this big variability between cold fronts and warming and cooling, that sort of thing. It's not till you get deeper into December and January that things stabilize temperature-wise a bit more. And then up into Whistler, where the focus of the jet stream, the atmospheric river, is, you can see a much different picture. 38 inches of snow forecast. Snow levels, well, here is the base of Whistler. Here's the top of Whistler, so pretty cold air the whole way through. The colder the air, the more likely this model is real. When you have like just barely cold enough to get snow, this kind of over forecast it, but this is probably in the ballpark. A good way to generate base for Whistler and get them for a Thanksgiving opening if that's what they intend to do. All right, let's go take a look long term. What's going on with the Madden Julian Oscillation and, of course, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. These two oscillations control the vast majority of the variability in weather across the Pacific Basin, if not the planet. As usual, we start by looking at winds on the equator across the Pacific. So there are two phases to the MJO, the active and the inactive phase. The active phase, and in the MJO, let's do this again. The active phase and the inactive phase rotate around our planet, where the active phase is on one side of the planet, the inactive phase is roughly on the other. They rotate from west to east. When the active phase moves over the Pacific Ocean, what it does is it's a big low pressure system, effectively, only on the equator. And what it does is it dampens trade winds, it creates low pressure, it creates precipitation that can reverse the trade winds. That in turn imparts energy to the jet stream. A stronger jet stream then feeds the storm track. The stronger the storm track, the more wind energy in the jet stream, the more you get storms and gales, just like we saw in the models before. Right now, a calm pattern. A week from now, supposedly a more energetic storm pattern. That is supposedly because the inactive phase of the MJO, which we think is in control right now, is supposed to be fading, and the active phase is supposed to be moving in. So, let's go see what's really going on. First off, this is data from the TAO buoy array, a series of buoys strung across the equator in the Pacific Ocean used for monitoring El Nino. But because there are wind sensors on the buoys, and they're not like hourly wind readings, it's like a 5-day mean, okay, average over 5 days. But it gives you a rough idea of what's going on. So this is the East Pacific here, West Pacific here, that's New Guinea, 180 west, that's the date line. Right there's the equator. All right, the arrows is all we're looking at. Strong east winds. The longer the arrow, the stronger the wind. So strong trades over the East Pacific, over the Central Pacific, and over the Kelvin wave generation area. The West Pacific, the area from 170 west out to 135 east, as far west in the Pacific as you can get, 5 degrees north and south of the equator. When the active phase moves over here, it'll dampen these winds, and then that can in turn start off a storm cycle. But it's not the means that really matter, it's the anomalies. Are these winds stronger or weaker than normal for this time of year? In the far east Pacific, we see not a whole lot of arrows, or maybe a little westerly arrows, so we'll say neutral, pretty much normal for this time of year. But when you get to the central Pacific here, you see the east arrows showing up, so winds stronger, and in the Kelvin wave generation area, winds stronger than normal. So again, evidence of the inactive phase of the MJO. Let's go look at the 1-week forecast. All right, so this chart depicts the east and west component of the wind over the entire planet. That is, where the blues are, winds are blowing out of the east stronger than normal. Where the reds are, winds are blowing out of the west stronger than normal. East winds typically are associated with the inactive phase of the MJO, the one that doesn't feed the storm track. The red ones are the ones that feed the storm track. So you want to see red over the West Pacific. All right, so how do we read this chart? Well, the date line's running right up the middle, 180 west there. The far East Pacific on the equator, like Ecuador, is at 80 west, so right along here. Okay, and that's East Pacific. The far West Pacific starts at 135 east, so right here. So and the Kelvin wave generation area is like right in that area. And what do we see? Well, we've seen east anomalies all October and for months before that. And pretty much they're going to continue. So this would indicate the inactive phase of the MJO is to persist, but not as strong as it's been the past, we'll say, 2 weeks, something like that. Maybe backing off some, one can hope. So let's go look 2 weeks out. We're looking at outgoing long wave radiation, okay? This is fancy words for cloud cover. The more clouds, the better the odds of it being associated with the active phase of the MJO. Blues mean less sunlight reflectivity off the ocean surface, meaning more clouds. All right, so this goes out 2 weeks, each panel 5 days. So today, 5 days from now, 10 days from now, 15 days from now. South America there, Central America, Hawaii, New Guinea right there, Australia, EQ, the equator right there, 180 west, the date line. So the important area, the Kelvin wave generation area right here. So supposedly the active phase of the MJO is starting to push into the West Pacific even today, building some 5 days from now, holding 10 days from now, maybe fading a little 2 weeks from now. This is what we want to see. This is from the statistic model. Now the dynamic model, not so encouraging, suggesting the active phase weak, holding for 5 days, starting to fall apart, and gone 2 weeks from now. So a bit of disparity between the two models. Digging in a little bit deeper, the same two models, the statistic model and the dynamic model, but this shows you the strength in more specific terms and the exact position of the core of the active phase of the MJO. So the MJO moves from west to east, from the Indian Ocean over the maritime continent, it's like Bali, over the West Pacific to the East Pacific, under the United States, across the Atlantic, over Africa, back to the Indian Ocean. Where the heavy dot is, right there, that's where the active phase is. So it's over the maritime continent. So it's over Bali, that area, poised to start pushing into the West Pacific. The further the dot is away from the circle, if it's out here, then the active phase is strong. If it's here, it's very weak. 3 different members suggest it moving to the West Pacific generally 2 weeks from now. 2 of them exceedingly weak, one of them suggesting at best modest strength. The dynamic model just has the active phase noodling around somewhere into the West Pacific, but so weak it doesn't even matter. So neither of these is particularly encouraging. Next up, the upper level model showing propensity for precipitation. The greens, areas favorable for precipitation. Yellows and oranges, not favorable for precipitation. So the greens would be the active phase, the MJO. The yellows, the inactive phase. All right, and 8 different panels here, each being 5 days in duration. South America, Central America, 0, that's the equator. The date line roughly right there. New Guinea there, Philippines there, Kelvin wave generation area. This is where, if the active phase is over here and it's strong, that's where it does its best at, 1, imparting energy to the jet stream, 2, creating Kelvin waves, that is taking warm water that's typically here, start pushing it to the west, which in turn, if you have successive active phases of the MJO and Kelvin waves, you can create or possibly push yourself into El Nino, okay? But, so what do we have? Right now, looks like potential for precipitation. That would be weakly associated with the active phase of the MJO. Moving into the West Pacific, continuing 5 days from now, 10 days from now. And this is up in the upper level of the atmosphere. So what's down at the surface lags probably about 5 days behind, something like that. So from now through about the 4th of December, so we'll say the 9th of December, the active phase is to be traversing the Pacific. That would be a good opportunity, a good time to support storm development. And so it would be reasonable to expect there might be some surf resulting from that. But then as we get into, again, it says the 4th of December, so 5 days after that, we'll say the first week in December, the inactive phase sets up. It traverses the Pacific the whole way through about Christmas time. But then right about as you get to Christmas, another active phase is forecast moving into the West Pacific. So next couple of weeks, opportunity for swell production, bit of a downtime, and then again as we get towards Christmas, maybe another opportunity. All right, let's go out 1 month, the CFS model going out a month. All right, this is the same deal, whole planet on one chart, the blues. This is the east-west component of the wind up at about 4,700 feet, the 850 millibar level. Good proxy for what's going on down at the surface. Dateline running right up the middle. Blues are easterly anomalies. Reds are westerly anomalies. The dotted contour here is the inactive phase of the MJO. Okay, and you can see this goes out 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. Kelvin wave generation area, roughly right in here. So we see easterly anomalies and the inactive phase of the MJO in control for about the next week. It starts fading out. Easterly anomalies start fading. You see westerly anomalies here over the Indian Ocean trying to actually push into the Kelvin wave generation area, making it to 150 west. That's about 40% of the way into it, starting about November 20th and holding through about the end of November, and then crashing back a little bit, and almost a hint of the active phase of the MJO. So not a stronger active phase like this one back in early October, but still something, at least a little nudge in the right direction. And then finally, if going out a month isn't enough to tease us, well then let's go out 3 months. The 3-month CFS model. Now what's in the past is down here. The forecast is up here. Just eyeballing it, and the date line right up the middle again, and the blues are the easterly anomalies. We see a good swath of easterly anomalies. Again, when you have persistent easterly anomalies in what appears to be the inactive phase of the MJO, that typically is La Nina. Likewise, what was it, 2 years ago? We had persistent westerly anomalies, these yellows, filling the Kelvin wave generation area for months and months on end. That was some form of weak El Nino, and we had pretty good surf. Right now we're paying the price. We all knew coming into this, we thought maybe we'd sneak out, and last year would be it'd be a 1-year La Nina, but no, we're in a 2-year La Nina, so unfortunately we're paying the price right now. All right, so dateline, where am I? Right there. You see our strong easterly anomalies in control, probably associated with the inactive phase of the MJO. We see some westerly anomalies trying to move their way across the Pacific right in here. That would probably be the active phase of the MJO. And then you see another bit of blues hanging into January, inactive phase, and then probably an active phase. Let's overlay the MJO, see if we're close. Oh, there we go. Okay, the red dotted contour is the inactive phase of the MJO, moving through the Kelvin wave. We're at the peak of it right now. And by November 30th, it's pretty much out. The active phase of the MJO, let's see, the far West Pacific, 135 east. So starting maybe in the next couple of days, westerly anomalies theoretically trying to build into the Kelvin wave generation area. So again, this is our target for storm production through about, even as late as almost Christmas. Then a little inactive phase. And then as we get into first week of January and beyond, things theoretically looking much better, but this model, what was it, 2 months ago, suggested that this active phase was going to be large, broad, strong, and was just going to crush La Nina, and now it's just a figment or a fragment of what it was, very weak, still looking like La Nina in control. So finally, let's overlay the low-pass filter. This is your El Nino La Nina indicator. The dotted contour is a high pressure bias, okay? And you notice 2 contours centered right over the date line. So this is sort of like permanent high pressure, just locked over the date line, though low pressure does, it's just a tendency towards high pressure, where the solid contour is a tendency towards low pressure, and it's all over the maritime continent. So again, this favors the Indian Ocean for storm development and suggests the Pacific to be pretty high and dry for the foreseeable future. All right, so let's go take a look down in the ocean. Enough of the MJO and that sort of thing. The El Nino, La Nina, in this case La Nina indicator, clearly identifies itself by its signature and what it does in the ocean. So we look again at the TAO buoy array, that series of buoys strung across the equator. And now we're looking down into the ocean. This is the West Pacific here, East Pacific here, down 100 meters, 200 meters, like roughly 200 yards. It's pretty deep. These are the anchor lines. You can see them right over here, and here, and here. These are the anchor lines on those buoys. The X's are actual sensors on the anchor lines. The data is collected, sent up to a central processing facility. A model is used to fill in the gaps in between. So you have sensors here and here, but what about here? The model has to make guesses at what's happening in between. Also notice there should be a stack of sensors right here. They're all out, so we have a dead buoy or series of buoys at 140 west. So again, the model has to make guesses to fill in the gaps. And what we see is warm water. This is centigrade, 29 degree centigrade, the isotherm line right here. It hasn't even been here for months, so at least it's back at 165 east. The 28 degree isotherm at about 176 east. That's where it's been for weeks now. The 24 degree isotherm at 130 west. I think it was maybe back at 135 last week, so it's actually crept east just a little bit, but not a whole lot. But it's not the actual water temperatures that matter. Oh, and yes, the reds are warmer, the blues are cooler. But it is the anomalies, differences from normal for this time of year, that really matters. And what we see is warm water sequestered in the West Pacific 2 degrees centigrade above normal, but this little line here has made some eastward progress. It was at, where's 150? So 150 is right there. So it's made some eastward progress from last week, but not so much because, so this would be a Kelvin wave if it was like marching across the Pacific, driven by the active phase of the MJO, driven by the westerly anomalies that the active phase creates, pushing warm water. This warm water here in the east starts pushing it, in the west starts pushing it to the east. But what's really happening is there was a massive ball of cold water, an upwelling Kelvin wave, they call it. Cold water, it's making its way across the Pacific and losing some heat while it does that. And so as it moves out, and we hope it does move out, that would open the door then for actual Kelvin waves to form. But right now it's been acting like a brick wall for months and just allowing no warm water to move east at all. And you want warm water at the ocean surface because warm water helps support evaporation. When you have evaporation, you have uplifting. That helps then in turns create energy in the atmosphere, right? And wherever, if you have cold water south of California, where on the equator, okay, wherever the cold water is, then north and south of that, you tend to have high pressure and you don't get precipitation. So this would suggest that dry air in the East Pacific, wetter air isolated to the far West Pacific. Let's go take a look at another model here. Now this one little bit higher res model, we think, takes a couple more things into consideration, but it's still painting the same picture. Warm water, but moving now to 150 west. It was at 155 last week, but more so, this upwelling pocket of cold water is fading, losing some energy, and moving off to the east, allowing warm water to travel in behind it. So maybe that's a good sign, but not for, I mean, that's still a month or two out from being away, from disappearing or dissipating at best. Sea level anomalies, another way to sort of infer what's going on temperature-wise down in the ocean. If you have cold water down 100 meters, 150 meters in the ocean, cold water tends to contract. When it does that, it'll create a divot on the ocean's surface. And you can measure that with the satellite. You can use the Jason 3 satellite. It's very accurate. Take out all the waves, take out the wind waves, strip out the tides. You see a little divot on the ocean surface here, 20 centimeters, minus 15 centimeters below normal, 10 centimeters below normal. Oh, and let's get ourselves oriented here. The equator, right there. The dateline, right there. Chile, Peru, Central America, Hawaii right there. Philippines there, New Guinea there. Kelvin wave generation area right here. And you see the positive anomalies there. One can assume that is warmer than normal water. Warmer than normal water expands. That creates a little bump on the ocean surface. And you can see that depicted here with 15, 20, maybe that's 25 centimeters above normal. Also, when you have La Nina, okay, so here's your colder water. You would have high pressure here. You'd have high pressure down here. And that would be amplifying the trades here, scooping out water here, pushing it off to the west. As long as the trades are blowing, the water will be held like sequestered into the far west Pacific. As soon as the trades slacken off, all this warm water will start flowing to the east in the form of a Kelvin wave, and that too can help feed the development of El Nino, though we don't see any of that at the moment. And then finally, the upper ocean heat anomalies over time. East Pacific here, West Pacific here. We're going back a year. The reds are warmer than normal temperatures. The blues, colder than normal temperatures. So last year, our La Nina, cold water. Oh, and the dateline. Where's the dateline? We'll just put that in there as reference. Right there. So you can see, last year, colder than normal waters at depth. This is down 300 meters. So filling the East Pacific. Then somewhere around March of last year, the trades backed off. You see warm water in the form of a Kelvin wave, what would you call it? Pushing across the Pacific. 1 Kelvin wave, 2 Kelvin waves, a third in June, and then the trades picked up again in July. And then we had this massive pocket of colder than normal water in the East Pacific. Much larger this year than it was last year. But notice, it looks like it's starting to give up the ghost, starting to fade, and starting to retreat off to the east. Warm water not building as strong as last year, but we'll see. Anything to get this cold water out of the Pacific, we'll take anything at this point. All right, next up, sea surface temperature anomalies. Differences from normal for this time of year. And what we see, well, let's get ourselves oriented. Chile, Peru, South America. Central America, Baja. There's Hawaii. Dateline, the equator, roughly right there. Ecuador's there. Galapagos right there, or right there. You can see this is sort of a stitched together image. All right, and you see generally weekly warmer than normal water south of Central America to about the equator. But the obvious, clear thing that's going on is cooler than normal water off of Chile, Peru, moving west on the equator with its peak somewhere here from a point south of California out to about a point south of Hawaii. This is the core of the cool pole. We'll call it a westward displaced La Nina because it's not tucked up right here along Ecuador. It's sort of out in the Pacific. They call it, if you had a westward displaced El Nino, they call it a Modoki El Nino, an El Nino sort of. Because typically El Nino, you get warm water. It'd be the exact opposite. much warmer than normal water in this area. But now we have La Nina, but westward displaced, not right here, sort of in the middle of the central Pacific, and certainly colder than normal. Sea surface temperature trend, pretty obvious, and all we're interested in is the equator. The blues, colder than normal, pretty cold off of Ecuador, the Galapagos, the whole way out to a point almost south of Hawaii right there. La Nina, trying again, it sort of surges, when it doubles up, when La Nina doubles up with the inactive phase of the MJO, it sort of surges. When the active phase pushes over the Kelvin wave generation area, then it destructively interferes with it and trades back off a little bit, and then you'll see maybe these temperatures almost return to normal for 2 or 3 weeks, and then they'll surge back up again. So right now, still inactive phase of the MJO and La Nina surging. The backed off view, you can pretty much see it. Colder than normal water, a tongue of cold water from Ecuador the whole way across almost the whole Pacific. Warm water balled up here, trying to squeeze around the edges. It's just like a dagger going right into the heart of it, driven by stronger than normal trades, creating the upwelling, creating the cold pool. But you see most of it seems to be centered out here south of Hawaii, not so much south of the U.S. West Coast. We've actually had some rain in Northern California and more expected. Are we going to get a normal amount of rainfall this winter? I'd say odds are pretty low. We're hoping to beat last year's, 42% of normal. If we can get 70% of normal, that would be really good. We've had a good start. I've got 6 inches in the rain gauge so far this year. I think we normally get about, in the San Francisco area, maybe 25 inches. So we're off to a start, but we'll see. It's a long ways to go still before winter's over. Sea surface temperature anomaly history. The Nino 1.2 region. This is the area right there by the Galapagos, Ecuador. In the far East Pacific, temperatures dropping down to 1.228 thousandths of a degree, 1.25 degrees below normal. But it can be pretty noisy. Still, the trend is down. It certainly doesn't look good. The official El Nino monitoring region, the Nino 3.4 region, this is the area on the equator from south of California out to about the dateline. Temperatures holding at 0.75 degrees, 766 thousandths below normal. The official La Nina range is once you're 0.5 degree below normal for 3 consecutive months, for 5 consecutive 3-month periods in a row, we'll just say roughly 5 months, then you're in La Nina. But based on the temperatures, you go, well, we're not really in La Nina now. Yeah, but there's a whole host of other factors. I mean, just looking at the temperature anomaly charts and the jet stream and everything else, it's clear that La Nina is in control of the global atmospheric pattern at the moment, and that likely is not going to change anytime soon. So what's going on in the atmosphere above the ocean? I mean, it's the atmosphere that matters, right? The jet stream drives the storm track, right? If you don't have a strong jet stream, you don't have storms. But the MJO, again, that's an atmospheric thing. That sort of drives the jet stream. But the ocean and temperatures under the ocean can give you an indicator way in advance of either pending Kelvin waves, warm Kelvin waves, or cold water that then eventually gurgle to the surface and then change ocean surface temperatures. It's the interaction of the surface of the ocean and the atmosphere that drive everything. So if the ocean's cold, above it, you're going to get high pressure. If the ocean's warmer than normal, you're going to get low pressure. You're going to get energy transfer to the jet stream and a better storm track and better potential for precipitation into California. So the last thing we're looking at here is the Southern Oscillation Index. Difference in pressure between Darwin, Australia, and Tahiti. Tahiti is in the Pacific, pretty close to the dateline there. Darwin, roughly in the Indian Ocean. When pressure is lower at Tahiti, the index goes negative. So here's the daily contribution. Today, plus 7.12, positive. And then you start looking back and you go, my goodness, it's been positive quite a bit. In fact, almost the entire month. That probably suggests pretty strongly that pressure has been higher than normal in Tahiti At a minimum, that suggests the inactive phase of the MJO. The inactive phase of the MJO is like a mini La Nina. So, but this is noisy. So let's go look at the 30-day average. Take some of the variability out. Today's value, 7.88. What's it been? Well, we were up at 11 and practically 11.5 a month ago. We're down to 7.88. That's not too bad, even considering we're in some sort of big La Nina, at least for the moment. And then, so this would sort of suggest, well, maybe we are coming out of the active phase of the MJO. When the index goes lower, active phase. When it goes higher, inactive phase. But then we'll go to the El Nino La Nina indicator, the 90-day average. Today's value, 9.19. And what's it been? Well, it really hadn't changed a whole lot in a month. Maybe gone up a little bit. But this is not like some red screaming flag going La Nina, La Nina. So from an atmospheric perspective, at least according to this, not a clear sign of La Nina. Okay, so that's the index. But we all know, well, one, the surf hasn't been that great lately. It's been pretty dry. Yeah, we've had some precipitation in California, but not a whole lot. Kind of some early season freak storms. Will it persist? Does this tell us anything? I don't know. Let's go look at the index over time. Here we go. The 30-day moving SOI. All right. Here is 0. When your index is down here, that's negative. That would be indicative of at least the active phase of the MJO. The downward spikes are the active phase of the MJO. The upward spikes are the inactive phase of the MJO. So back in January 2019, even into early 2020, looked like we were in some sort of a weak El Nino. But then as we got into the fall of last year, clearly inactive phase took dominance. The index went positive up to plus 20 at one point. And then this past summer, as we got in July, the active phase took over. We had some Kelvin waves and almost like, hey, maybe La Nina's over. No, now we're starting that upward climb. You can see the trend here. And where were we last year? So last year in July, August, September, October, November, we were right at about 10, let's say. This year, where are we? July, August, September, October, right about at 10. In fact, a complete mirror image of where we were last year. And then notice, it did this dip, just like what it's doing now. And then as we got into January, it shot way positive. Suspect that's where we're headed. Mirror image of what happened last year. Let's go take a look at the forecast. All right, raw data from the CFS version 2 model, forecast temperatures, sea surface temperature anomalies for the Nino 3.4 region, the official El Nino monitoring region. So where are we? October, we're in November, we're right about here. Temperatures forecast crashing as we get into, this is the middle of the month, January, down to minus 1.75 degrees. So that would be probably about where we were last year, maybe even a bit colder. This is the raw data. And then the good news is theoretically warming and getting back to normal in July, almost like what happened last year. Please don't give us a third year of La Nina. There's no indicator that we will. I don't know that I've ever even seen a 3-year La Nina, even in the worst of La Ninas, and we don't expect that's going to happen. And this is the more refined forecast, the PDF corrected version. Temperatures going down to 1.5 degrees below normal. This has been consistently suggesting that, again, about like what happened last year. And we get to the new middle of January, and then a quick retreat from there back to normal as we get to midsummer. So for right now, things pretty quiet for the moment. But the good news is, a week from now, theoretically, things are to be improving. The active phase of the MJO is supposed to start moving into the West Pacific, and though not particularly strong and not expected to have a major impact, it should at least get some energy going in the jet stream, which in turn should create some gales, which in turn should generate some winds and some surf, and then swell radiating into Hawaii and possibly the U.S. West Coast. Maybe a hint of some rain here for California and snow for the mountains, not a lot. What is that, about later in the work week, but nothing serious. The main focus, though, you can see it, the jet stream atmospheric river just plowing into British Columbia, holding for all week. As the active phase of the MJO moves across the Pacific over the next month, the thought is it will pull the jet stream further south, and then maybe as we get into mid to later December, we'll get some opportunities for precip more into California and certainly in the Pacific Northwest. All right, so for now, at least there's waves, right? And there's even some southern hemi background swell pushing into Southern California. That'll continue through about the middle, towards the end of the work week, and then after that it fades out. And then we're at the mercy of the jet stream in the North Pacific. Please give us some surf. We're hoping that's going to happen, and it sort of looks like it will, if you believe the model's going to weak out, and right now we're desperate, so I'll believe it. All right, so if you enjoyed the video, whoops, there we go. Give us a thumbs up. We'd appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. If you have questions, comments, concerns, go ahead, type them in. We'll try to respond to them as quickly as we can. Sometimes we get some pretty good discussions going here. All right, and if you don't want to do any of that, but you still want to see the video, go to stormsurf.com. All the data we reviewed tonight is available on the site there. You can, the link to the video will be posted at the top of every page of the site as soon as we post the video, and you can view it that way. And of course, follow along during the week. Buoy information, weather models, wave models, snow models. You can geek out all day long. Lots of data there. I know I do it every day, hours at a time, trying to get a handle on what's going on. All right, and then build your own forecast, and you can test your knowledge with our video next week, and then we can compare notes. All right, thanks for watching. We'll do this again next week. Same time, same channel. Thanks for watching.